President Xi Jinping's vision of a glorious China has struck a great wall. Economic and diplomatic supremacy was supposed to open up new Silk Roads. Instead, he's overreached. Now everything he says or does is met with suspicion. Beijing is being accused of worldwide hacking attempts to steal a technological lead. The draconian surveillance and social credit system being imposed on the Chinese people is raising eyebrows. Mass detention and re-education of ethnic Muslim Uyghurs in Xinjiang has even once friendly nations expressing dismay. And the world's Christians have been put offside by attempts to rewrite their Bible, impose Communist Party leadership among their hierarchies and forcefully close nonconformist churches. And all that is before one takes into account China's blindly assertive ambitions over the South and East China Seas, and the democratic nation of Taiwan. President Xi may well be proud of his nation's resurgent economic and military strength. He may well wish to shrug off what he defines as a century of humiliation, but the University of London's China Institute says Xi's aggressive foreign policy has produced what is, for him, an unexpected backlash. And that presents a dangerous problem. Xi Jinping has changed the politics in China. He cannot afford to, or would prefer not to show, any signs of weakness, Steve Tsang, director of the SOAS China Institute, told CNN. Belt and Road unravels. President Xi has copped an international bruising. Even Hong Kong's South China Morning Post, itself increasingly feeling the intense pressure to conform with China's Communist Party thought, dares to admit this. It's just published a series of articles analyzing their supreme leader's performance. There we were, all ready for Donald Trump to cede global leadership, but China's heavy-handedness has left its neighbors happy to see the local thug beaten up by the bigger, global bully, criticizes commentator Kareem Raslan. Delve deeper. Australia warned it is sleepwalking into war, and Beijing has brought this upon itself, through its own actions. It is only very recently that the U.S. has begun to feel China's rise poses a threat, writes commentator Amir Ahmed Awin. Now, the Western world's focus has changed to monitoring China. With China on the radar, every move it makes is subject to scrutiny. The election of Donald Trump to the role of U.S. president appears to have filled Xi with confidence and ambition. Here was the opportunity to ram home China's newfound global influence. Trump is a nationalist. Globalism isn't his thing. And he seems more happy dissing his nation's long-term allies than the dictators threatening his security. President Xi sensed an opportunity. With the U.S. in retreat on the global stage, China could step in to fill the void. And he had the relevant policies in place, a rapidly expanding military, and an economic master plan, the Belt and Road Initiative, designed to exert influence across the world. But, according to Raslan, Xi appears to have made his move too soon. Beijing's not yet up to the task. A compelling portrait of an embattled leader is beginning to emerge, he writes. Strong man with clay feet amid a flurry of turmoils, Xi, who declared himself a president without term limits just last year, is looking less secure. Dissent among Chinese policymakers is also growing. The Raslan South China Morning Post piece reads. With the 40th anniversary of Deng Xiaoping's dramatic reforms just around the corner, many observers are assessing both men, and Xi, despite his undoubted political muscle, is by no means winning the contest. Commentator Awin is more optimistic in his article about China's, and therefore Xi's, future. China has what it takes to weather the storm. As an old civilization, China has gone through many ups and downs in its history and learned many bitter lessons. Now it is mature enough to face any situation and navigate through these difficult times. A third commentator adds a more ominous tone to this view. At a time when a rapidly modernizing China is a leading global player, it is tempting to dismiss this doctrine, Xi Jinping thought, as anachronistic party speak from a bygone era. We succumb to this temptation at our peril, writes Steve Tsang. And he reminds us what that thought is. She sees no place for political experimentation or liberal values in China, and regards democratization, civil society and universal human rights as anathema, but this clash of international cultures is rapidly taking a backseat. Money talks. And nobody likes a bully. Faced with reversals abroad and a slowdown internally, Xi must be careful to play his cards right, Raslin writes. Although the rest of the world was initially dismissive of Trump, it's clear to all that, with China at least, he means business. As long as China is heavy-handed with its neighbors in Asia, the rest of the region will be more than happy to see the local thug beaten up by the bigger, global bully. We don't like Trump, but it is arguable that we like Xi even less. Economic power glitch. Economically, China's power is enormous. It has loaned billions of dollars to risky nations, knowing they may not meet repayments. This provides the opportunity to seize key assets, such as deepwater ports, throughout the Indo-Pacific. Faced with such accusations, the Chinese Communist Party has labeled them ridiculous and absurd. Unlike the United States, China has absolutely no interest in controlling other nations' politics. The global community is very clear about that, a foreign ministry spokeswoman said as recently as last week. Related, Australia repositions warships to deter aggression, but Beijing has an image problem. Peaceful relations must be built on understanding. South China Morning Post commentator Awen warns. China's Belt and Road Initiative was launched to foster connectivity, improve infrastructure, and boost regional development. The initiative should also enhance people-to-people contacts, which would eventually promote understanding among nations, but the reality remains. Nations such as New Zealand, the Maldives, the Philippines, and even Australia, face an open backlash every time they act on, or even express, concerns over Beijing's undue influence over everything ranging from Huawei's 5G networks to political donations. But Xi may have spent too much time yearning for the green grass on the other side of the fence. He now has serious problems in his own backyard. Cracks are emerging in China's economy and the superpower is looking less invincible, writes Raslin. Huge internal debt, massive property oversupply, slowing growth, a tariff war with the U.S., sanctions, deflationary pressures, diminishing consumer demand. All are signs that confidence in China's growth is fast fading. Pax Sinica, the Chinese Empire. Beijing's military might has exploded in the past decade. It now has more submarines than the U.S. active in the Pacific. Its navy now has the power to project significant power over great distances. Meanwhile, its enormous missile umbrella can keep even the United States' vaunted nuclear-powered aircraft carriers beyond arm's length. Through fear and coercion, Beijing is working to expand its ideology. In order to bend, break and replace the existing rules-based international order, Admiral Philip Davidson, the commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, told media in Washington last week. Explore more. President Xi has built a brave new world and, just a week earlier, billionaire philanthropist George Soros labeled Xi the most dangerous opponent of the world's free societies. The social credit system, if it became operational, would give Xi total control over the people, he said. China is not the only authoritarian regime in the world, but it is the wealthiest, strongest and technologically most advanced. Beijing was quick to bite back. Soros had confused right and wrong in a meaningless statement, and it is not worth refuting, said Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying declared. In today's world, it is clear who is opening doors and building roads, and who is closing doors and building walls, but the United States under President Donald Trump appears to have lost its patience. Susan Shirk, chair of the 21st Century China Center at UC San Diego, told CNN Washington had significantly hardened its stance against Beijing over the past year. There's a panic about the China threat, she said. There's a kind of rushing to erect walls, at Jamie Sadel News.